Welcome back, everybody. We're diving deep today into the world of Khazanchi Jewellers Ltd.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating story.
I know, right? We've got their annual report for 2023-24, and wow, there's some interesting stuff in here. Like, okay, get this. Their revenue is up over 70% just this year.
That's incredible.
I know. Plus, they're opening up this huge new showroom, and they're like totally switching gears.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're going to focus entirely on individual customers like you.
Wow, that is a big change.
Right. It's really fascinating because they were, doing mostly that business-to-business stuff before.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, and I almost forgot. They're doing this themed photo shoot inspired by the Hiramandi district.
Interesting.
We'll definitely have to, unpack all that later, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it just sounds super interesting to me.
Yeah, it kind of hints at, their brand and how it's changing.
For sure.
They're looking at, some different inspiration.
Yeah.
Beyond just traditional Indian aesthetics,
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to the basics.
Yeah.
Khazanchi Jewellers, founded way back in 1971
Oh, wow.
by Tarachand Mehta. And get this, they only went public just last year.
Yeah, that's a pretty big step for them. It shows they're really looking to grow,
Absolutely. And they've got all kinds of stuff. I mean, they've got your gold and diamonds, of course, but also precious stones, fancy jewelry, even bullion.
It's smart. They're covering all their bases.
Right. Makes total sense in a market as, crazy as India's.
For sure, yeah. It means they can cater to everyone, basically.
Exactly. And speaking of catering to customers,
Mm-hmm.
they've got, let me see, 2 showrooms right now.
Yeah,
But they're getting ready to open this massive new one,
I heard about that.
like 10,000 square feet. It's going to be huge.
That's a big statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're not messing around with this expansion.
No, they're not. And remember how I mentioned that whole shift they're making from like 90% business to business to
Oh, yeah.
100% business to consumer?
Right. That's a bold move.
Well, this new showroom is like the key.
It all ties together.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, it makes sense when you look at their numbers.
How so?
Well, 84% of their revenue is already coming from Tamil Nadu.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Shows they've got a really strong base there.
Right. And get this. They've got this design library
Mm-hmm.
with over, wait for it, 500,000 designs.
That's insane.
I know. It's clear they really understand, what customers want.
No doubt about it. Giving people choices, that's what it's all about.
All right. Let's get down to brass tacks here. Financials. For fiscal year 2023-24,
Okay.
revenue grew, get this, by 70.51%.
Wow.
EBITDA by 148.97%.
That's incredible.
And get this, Pat, a whopping 261.13%.
Those are seriously impressive numbers. Not just growing, but getting more efficient, too.
Right. It's clear their whole strategy is working, scaling up, innovating, all that jazz.
And if you look at their financials, you see it, over the last 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a steady climb. Revenue, EBITDA margin, PAT margin, all going up, up, up.
So what's their secret? What's driving all this success?
Well, I think it starts with their leadership, right? I mean, you've got Tarachand Mehta, the founder. He's got decades of experience.
Right. And then his son, Gotham, he's been crucial in, expanding their reach.
Yeah, and Vikas Mehta, he's got that financial mind.
Yeah, it's a good balance.
You need that mix.
Right. Experience, new ideas.
Absolutely. And then you look at their board. They've got chartered accountants, company secretaries,
Oh, wow.
real experts making sure everything's running smoothly. And of course, you can't forget Ashish Mehta, the CEO, and Rajesh Kumar, the COO.
Yeah, they're holding it down day to day.
It's a solid team, that's for sure.
Okay, so we've got this amazing leadership team. They're putting up crazy numbers.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the bigger picture, right?
Right, we got to zoom out a little.
The economy.
Exactly. What's the economic outlook globally in India?
Okay, expert, give it to us straight. What's going on?
All right, so globally, the IMF is projecting growth at about 3.20% for 2024 and 3.30% for 2025.
Okay, not bad.
Not bad, but there are still some challenges.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, inflation is still a thing,
Right.
and those supply chain issues, they're still lingering.
Yeah, those are annoying.
So there's some uncertainty, but overall, things are looking positive.
Gotcha. So what about India specifically?
Well, India's economy is doing really well. In fiscal year 2024, they hit a real GDP growth of 8.2%.
Wow, that's impressive.
Right. And it's being driven by a few key sectors:
Like what?
manufacturing, construction, and services.
Oh, yeah, those are all doing well.
And inflation has eased up a bit, which is good for you and me.
Definitely. Helps the wallet.
Plus, their fiscal deficit is shrinking.
That's good, right?
It means they're managing their finances responsibly.
Okay, so overall, India's economy is looking pretty good. That's got to be good news for Khazanchi.
Absolutely. It creates a really favorable environment for growth.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the Indian jewelry market.
All right, one of my favorite topics.
It's massive, right? And gold is like so important there.
It's deeply ingrained in their culture.
Yeah, it's not just jewelry, it's an investment, a tradition.
It's a status symbol, a way to pass on wealth.
Okay, hit us with some fun facts about the Indian jewelry market.
All right, so fun fact number one, India is the second largest consumer of jewelry worldwide.
Wow, really?
Yep, and gold jewelry specifically. It holds a massive 77.72% share of the market revenue.
Gold is king.
Absolutely. And here's another interesting tidbit. There are these regional preferences.
Like what?
For example, in South India, they really love their 22-karat gold.
Okay, so that's 22-karat gold, South India, Khazanchi's expansion. It's all starting to make sense now.
They're strategically targeting a market that really values what they offer.
Makes sense, makes sense. So even though they're switching to, selling to regular customers like us, all that experience they have with business to business, all those connections from wholesale.
Oh, yeah, that could still be a huge advantage.
Especially in South India.
For sure. They know the players, they understand the market.
Okay, let's talk more about South India. Why are they such a powerhouse in the jewelry market?
Well, they account for a whopping 40% of the total jewelry demand in India.
40%? Wow.
It's a combination of factors. First, there's that love for 22-karat gold.
Right.
It's not just a preference, it's a tradition, a symbol of purity and prestige.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that. South India also has higher per capita incomes.
So they've got more money to spend.
Exactly. More purchasing power. And states like Kerala, they get a lot of financial inflow from the Gulf.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that further boosts the demand for gold.
So it's like this perfect storm?
You could say that. Cultural significance, economic prosperity, and global connections all coming together.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, so we've got tradition, but what about trends?
Oh yeah, things are changing.
What are we seeing out there?
Well, lightweight jewelry is becoming more popular.
Okay, makes sense. Easier to wear every day.
And daily wear pieces in general. People want jewelry they can wear all the time, not just for special occasions.
And of course, we can't forget about online sales.
Yeah, that's huge.
Especially for the younger generation.
Right, they're driving a lot of these trends, looking for contemporary designs, influenced by what they see internationally.
So it's a balancing act for Khazanchi. They need to tap into that love for tradition.
Yeah.
But also stay ahead of the curve.
It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay, so one more thing before we move on. Government policies.
Oh, yeah. Those can have a big impact.
So the union budget for 2024-25,
right,
they announced some duty cuts on precious metals.
That's big news for the industry.
What's the deal with that?
Well, they lowered customs duties on gold, silver, and platinum.
Okay.
It's a move designed to give the jewelry sector a boost.
But how does that actually affect Khazanchi and, me as a customer?
Well, it means that Khazanchi's costs go down, so they can buy their raw materials for less.
And that means?
They might be able to offer lower prices.
Oh, I like the sound of that. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, you get better prices, and Khazanchi potentially sells more.
All right, good deal. Are there any other, government initiatives that we should be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. They've been pretty active in this space.
Okay, what else have they been doing?
Well, they've relaxed FDI rules, which makes it easier for companies like Khazanchi to attract foreign investment.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. It helps them grow, and it's good for the economy as a whole.
What else?
They've made BIS hallmarking mandatory for all gold jewelry.
Oh, that's good for consumers, right?
It is. It guarantees the quality and authenticity of the gold.
Yeah, no one wants to get ripped off with fake jewelry.
Exactly. You're getting the real deal when you buy from a place like Khazanchi.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, they're also promoting digital payments and financial transparency in the industry.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there's even talk of setting up a gold spot exchange. A gold spot exchange. It would basically strengthen India's role in global gold pricing.
Wow, that's a big deal.
It is. It shows how seriously they're taking the jewelry sector.
Okay, so it sounds like the government is really on board with supporting the industry.
They definitely recognize its importance, both for the economy and for Indian culture.
That's awesome. All right, so we've talked about the bigger picture.
Yeah, the economy, the market.
Now let's bring it back to Khazanchi.
Back to the star of the show.
What makes them so unique in this, super dynamic market?
That's what we're going to explore next. We'll look at their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities.
Oh, yeah, and their threats.
Exactly. We'll give you the full picture of their potential.
Awesome. I can't wait to dive in.
That's going to be fascinating.
I'm sure it will be. Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into Khazanchi Jewellers. So we've talked about their story, their expansion, the market, all that.
Yeah, we've set the stage.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty.
The numbers.
Exactly. Their financial statements.
Think of it like a health checkup, but for their finances.
Okay, I'm ready for a checkup.
We can see, what they own, what they owe, how they're doing overall.
Perfect. Where do we start?
Let's start with the balance sheet. Gives us a snapshot, right? As of March 31st, 2024.
A snapshot of what exactly?
Their assets, their liabilities, and their equity.
Okay, so what jumps out at you when you look at Khazanchi's balance sheet?
Well, first thing, their total assets. It's a pretty hefty number. Over 22,682.53 lakhs.
Okay, that's a lot of lakhs. What's making up that number?
Well, a big chunk of it is inventory.
Makes sense, right? They're in the business of jewelry.
Exactly. And their inventory is valued at a whopping 20,101.62 lakhs.
So basically, they've got a treasure chest full of gold and diamonds.
You could say that. It shows you the scale of their operation. They're dealing with a lot of precious metals.
And they've also invested a good amount in property, plant, and equipment.
Right. That's another important asset. 12,280.84 lakhs to be exact.
So that includes their showrooms, their manufacturing facilities, all the tools they need to make their jewelry.
Everything they need to create those beautiful pieces.
Okay, so we've talked about what they own, their assets. What about the flip side? What do they owe?
Their liabilities. Their total liabilities come to 6,380.93 lakhs. And that includes...
Debt.
Yep. Long-term borrowing specifically. That stands at 1,896.26 lakhs.
Okay, so they've used some debt to fuel their growth. Is that a bad thing?
Not necessarily. Debt can be a strategic tool, especially for a company that's expanding.
But how do we know if it's too much debt?
That's where ratios come in handy, like the debt-to-equity ratio.
Okay, what does that tell us?
Well, it compares their debt to their equity, which is basically the value that belongs to the company's owners.
Right. So what's the story with Khazanchi's debt-to-equity ratio?
Well, their equity is strong. It stands at 16,301.60 lakhs. And a large part of that comes from retained earnings.
Retained earnings? What does that mean?
It means they're not just spending all their profits. They're keeping some and reinvesting it back into the business.
That's a good sign, right?
It's a very good sign. It shows they're managing their finances responsibly and thinking long-term.
Okay, so their balance sheet looks pretty healthy.
It does. Now let's move on to the statement of profit and loss. This is where we see the juicy details.
The details behind that impressive 70% revenue growth we talked about earlier.
Exactly. So their total revenue from operations hit 82,078.33 lakhs in this last fiscal year.
That's a huge jump from the previous year. What drove that growth?
Sales. And specifically, sales of gold ornaments and bullion.
So gold is their bread and butter.
For sure. Gold ornaments brought in 67,612.39 lakhs, and gold bullion sales generated 14,459.88 lakhs.
It's smart, right? They're catering to people who want to buy beautiful jewelry and people who see gold as an investment.
Exactly. They're covering both angles.
Okay, but revenue is only half the story, right? We need to talk about expenses.
Of course. Total expenses for the year were 78,482.39 lakhs.
All right. What were some of their big expenses?
Well, as you might expect, the cost of materials consumed is their biggest expense. It came in at 75,787.74 lakhs.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, basically it's the cost of all the gold, silver, diamonds, precious stones, everything they use to make the jewelry.
So those raw materials aren't cheap.
No, they definitely add up. They also had significant finance costs, mainly interest on their borrowings. That came to about 480.31 lakhs.
Okay, that makes sense. But the big question is, are they making enough profit to cover all these expenses?
They are. Despite the costs, their profit for the year was a very respectable 2,731.94 lakhs.
Okay, not bad. And what about earnings per share? That's what investors really care about, right?
Absolutely. Their earnings per share jumped to 11.04, a big increase from the previous year.
So they're making money and they're creating value for their shareholders.
That's what you want to see.
All right, let's circle back to those related party transactions we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, those are always interesting.
I know they're laid out in the financial statements, but can you break them down for us?
Sure. So remember, Khazanchi conducted transactions with Khazanchi Silvers Private Limited, and Pathik Sales Private Limited.
Right, and those companies have directors who are related to, like, the leadership team at Khazanchi.
That's right. So essentially, they're doing business with family members.
That always raises eyebrows, doesn't it?
It does. Transparency is key in these situations.
So what do the disclosures tell us about these transactions?
Well, the report says that these transactions were conducted in the ordinary course of business and at arm's length.
Arm's length, what does that mean?
It means they treated those related parties just like any other business partner. No special favors, no sweetheart deals.
Okay, so everything's above board.
Based on the disclosures, yes. But, it's always good for investors to scrutinize these things.
Make sure everything's legit.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the balance sheet, the profit and loss statement. What other financial statement gives us insight into Khazanchi's operations?
The cash flow statement. This one's all about the movement of cash, the lifeblood of any business.
Okay, so let's follow the money. What does Khazanchi's cash flow statement tell us?
Well, their biggest source of cash is their operating activities.
So their core business is generating cash.
Exactly. They brought in 7,366.94 lakhs in the last fiscal year.
That's a good sign, right?
Very good sign. It means their business is healthy and sustainable.
But they're also growing and investing a lot in expansion. How does that affect their cash flow?
Well, they've had some big cash outflows related to their investing activities. Specifically, buying fixed assets for their new showroom.
They're putting their money where their mouth is.
They are. It's a classic sign of a company in growth mode, investing for the future.
I like it. Their cash flow statement also shows a lot of cash coming in from financing activities.
Right. That's mainly because of their IPO.
They raised a lot of money from going public.
They did. And they're using it wisely to fuel their growth.
Smart move. Okay, so looking at the big picture, what's the takeaway from Khazanchi's financial statements?
I'd say they paint a very positive picture. Strong balance sheet, healthy profits, strategic use of cash.
They seem to have their financial house in order.
They do. But remember, financials are just one piece of the puzzle.
Right. We can't forget about the industry, the competition, all those other factors.
Exactly. Those qualitative factors are super important too.
So even though their financials look good, we need to consider the bigger picture.
Always. It's about connecting the dots, the numbers, the industry, the company's strategy.
Okay, so we've learned a lot about their financial journey, but we're not done yet. Remember that annual general meeting we mentioned?
Oh yeah, that's coming up. Shareholders get to have their say.
We'll break down all the details of the AGM in the next part of our deep dive. We're back. Last part of our Khazanchi deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, their journey, financials, the market.
It's a pretty fascinating story, right?
Totally. And now let's talk about their AGM, their annual general meeting.
Yeah, that's where shareholders get to really, make their voices heard.
Right. Ask questions, vote on important stuff.
Exactly. It's all about shareholder democracy.
So this AGM is happening on September 12th, 2024.
Okay.
And shareholders can actually participate remotely through e-voting starting on September 9th.
That's great. Makes it easier for everyone to participate.
Exactly. So there are some big decisions on the agenda. What are we looking at here?
Well, one thing that stands out is the reappointment of Gautam as executive director.
Right. He's retiring by rotation, but he's eligible to be reappointed.
Exactly. And he's put his name forward.
Given his experience and everything he's done for Khazanchi, I'd say it's pretty likely he'll be reappointed.
I'd agree. He's been a key part of their success.
Another big decision is the appointment of Mrs. Rithika Bora as a non-executive director.
Oh, yeah. What's her background?
She's a chartered accountant, so strong finance background. That's got to be valuable for the board.
Absolutely. Especially with Khazanchi growing so fast.
And it's interesting. She's married to Ashish Mehta, the CEO.
Some more family ties.
It's definitely a recurring theme with Khazanchi.
Yeah, family businesses can be great, but, transparency and good governance are super important.
Absolutely. Especially with things like those related party transactions we talked about.
Oh, right. And those are actually on the AGM agenda too.
They need shareholder approval.
So as a reminder, we're talking about those proposed transactions with Khazanchi Silvers Private Limited and Pathik Sales Private Limited.
Right. Those companies with directors who are related to Khazanchi's leadership.
Exactly. And remember, these transactions are mainly about buying and selling raw materials.
And the amounts are pretty substantial.
They are. For Khazanchi Silvers, the limit is $5,000 annually.
Okay.
And for Pathik Sales, it's a whopping $10,000.
Wow, that's a lot of zeros. What does this all mean for Khazanchi?
Well, it shows they're pretty reliant on these related parties for a big chunk of their raw materials.
That could be risky, right?
It could be. If those relationships go sour, or if there are questions about pricing, it could cause problems.
So it's something shareholders need to think carefully about.
Definitely. It's all about weighing the risks and benefits.
Okay, so what else is in this AGM notice?
Well, they've laid out clear instructions for how to participate in the e-voting and join the virtual meeting.
Good, good.
And they've explained all those special resolutions really clearly.
That's important. Shareholders need to understand what they're voting on.
Transparency is key.
Okay, and what about the board report? Does that give us any extra insights?
Yeah, it sheds some light on their operations and performance throughout the year.
Like what?
Well, one thing I noticed is that they've changed how they're using the funds they raised from the IPO.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're directing more of it towards working capital.
Working capital, what's that?
Basically, it's the money they need to run their day-to-day operations.
Oh, okay.
They're growing so fast, they need more cash on hand to keep everything running smoothly.
Makes sense. What else is in the board report?
They talk about their CSR initiatives, their corporate social responsibility.
Oh, that's good. It shows they care about more than just profits.
Right. And their focus is on education, which I think is great.
Yeah, investing in the future.
Exactly. It all comes back to that, doesn't it?
So we started by talking about Khazanchi's incredible growth, their ambitious plans.
We looked at their financials, saw how well they're managing their money.
And now we've explored all these key decisions that are going to shape their future.
It's been a real deep dive.
It has. We've learned so much about Khazanchi, about the jewelry market, about how businesses work.
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. And remember, the business world is constantly changing.
Things move fast.
So keep learning, keep exploring, do your own research, form your own opinions.
And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a whole new company.